There was once a man named Richard Coleman, one of the richest men in the city, but no amount of money could fill the emptiness in his heart. Years ago, he had lost his little daughter, Mara, in a tragic car accident on a stormy night. Her body was never found, only her tiny shoe washed up near the riverbank. For years, Richard lived in guilt, believing his business success had cost him the one person he loved the most. Every night, he stared at her photo, whispering apologies that no one heard. His wife couldn't bear the pain and left, and Richard drowned himself in work, turning his sorrow into an empire of steel and glass. One day, he decided to visit one of his largest construction sites, a massive steel plant on the outskirts of the city. As his car entered the dusty gate, workers stopped and stared. It wasn't every day that the billionaire himself showed up. Richard stepped out in his dark suit and red tie, his sharp eyes scanning the yard. He walked past roaring machines and men shouting directions until something stopped him cold. Among the workers lifting heavy beams was a young, black woman in a neon vest and orange headband. She wiped sweat from her brow, and when she turned her face toward him, time froze. His heart jumped. She looked exactly like Amara would have looked at that age. The same bright eyes, the same smile that used to light up his mornings. Richard stood there, trembling, his chest tightening as memories flooded back. He whispered her name under his breath, but the noise of the factory swallowed it. He walked closer, disbelief in every step. Could fate be this cruel or this kind? She noticed him staring and gave a polite nod. Not knowing her face had just ripped open a billionaire's old wound. He called the site manager and asked, "Who is that worker?" The manager replied, "That's Maya, sir, one of our best welders. She's quiet, hard-working. Been with us 6 months." Richard's voice cracked. "Maya, does she have any family?" The manager shrugged. "She grew up in foster homes." "I think." Those words hit Richard like a thunderclap. Foster homes, just like Amara might have ended up if someone had rescued her that night. He tried to stay composed, but his hands trembled. Later, as he watched her work, something inside him broke. The way she tilted her head, her careful movements, her hum while working, all identical to his daughter. That night he couldn't sleep. He replayed her face again and again. The next morning, he returned to the site, pretending it was a routine visit. But all he wanted was to see her again. When he approached her during lunch break, Maya smiled nervously. "Good afternoon, sir," she said. Her voice, soft, warm, and familiar, made his eyes well up. He asked about her life, where she grew up, what she remembered of her childhood. She laughed a little, saying she didn't remember much before age 4, only flashes of water, flashing lights, and someone calling her name in the dark. Richard's heart nearly stopped. That was the night of the accident. Tears formed, but he turned away before she could see. He ordered a private investigation quietly, hiring his most trusted detective to look into Maya's past. Days passed, and each day, Richard grew more attached. He would watch her laugh with her co-workers, humble yet radiant, just like the daughter he lost. The workers joked that the boss must be impressed by her work ethic, but they had no idea the storm raging inside him. One evening, he invited the crew for dinner at a local restaurant as a gesture of appreciation. Maya sat quietly at the corner, unsure why such a rich man paid attention to someone like her. Richard watched her from across the table, tears silently falling. He wanted to reach out and say, "You're my daughter, my miracle." But fear stopped him. What if he was wrong? What if this hope shattered again? The detective called him 2 weeks later. "Sir, you're not going to believe this," the man said. "There's no record of Maya's birth before she was found near a riverbank in another state. She was adopted by a social worker after being found unconscious as a toddler." Richard's knees went weak. The riverbank, that was where Amara's shoe had been found. He dropped the phone, his world spinning. He rushed to the site the next day, desperate to tell her everything. But when he arrived, Maya was gone. Her co-workers said she'd taken the day off to visit her adoptive mother in the hospital. Richard drove all night until he found the small-town hospital. When he entered, he saw her sitting beside an older woman's bed, holding her hand with pure love. He couldn't interrupt, just stood at the doorway watching the daughter he had longed for. The woman on the bed looked up and saw him. "You're Richard Coleman, aren't you?" she whispered weakly. He nodded. The woman smiled faintly. "I always knew one day you'd find her. She deserves to know." Richard's heart pounded. She knew. As the woman closed her eyes for the last time, Maya turned and saw Richard crying silently. Confused, she asked, "Sir, why are you here?" He tried to speak, but his voice failed. The truth hung heavy between them, unspoken but real. Viewers, sometimes life gives us miracles when we least expect them, and sometimes those miracles come wrapped in pain. What happens next will break your heart, so stay tuned for Chapter 2. And if this story touched you, make sure to like the video. Share it with someone who believes in fate. And don't forget to subscribe for more heart-touching stories like this one. After that day in the hospital, Richard's world changed forever. The face of the young woman named Maya haunted him every hour. Her smile, her voice, the way she cared for that dying woman, like a daughter who had known pain and love both. That night, Richard sat in his mansion surrounded by silence, holding the same photograph he had been staring at for 15 years, the one of little Amara in his arms at her 5th birthday. He whispered, "If you're really her, God, please give me a sign." The next morning, he made a decision. He sent his investigator back to gather DNA evidence discreetly. Maya's coffee, mug from the work site, and a strand of her hair left in the locker room were quietly collected, and Richard provided his own DNA sample. The test took days, but each moment felt like a lifetime. Richard couldn't focus on meetings, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. All he could think about was whether the universe had finally given him back the piece of his soul that was lost. One stormy night, just like the one when he lost his daughter, the call came. The lab technician's voice was calm but heavy. "Sir, the results are in, and I think you should sit down." Richard's heart began to pound. The technician hesitated before continuing. "She's not your biological daughter, but sir, there's something you should know. Her DNA shows traces of connection, a very close genetic relation to your late wife." Richard froze, unable to process it. "What do you mean?" he whispered. The man explained, "Maya is not your daughter. She's your wife's daughter, but with someone else." The words shattered him. It felt like 1,000 knives piercing his heart. His wife had died years ago in an accident, and Richard had always believed she loved him faithfully. He stood by the window, trembling, realizing that the woman he had adored and mourned had lived with a secret. Maya was the result of that secret, born before Richard even knew. The reason she looked like Amara was because she was, in truth, Amara's half-sister. The truth destroyed him. For years, he had hated himself for losing his daughter, and now he discovered his wife had hidden another child from him, one he never knew existed. He felt betrayed, confused, and yet he couldn't hate Maya. She was innocent, blameless, carrying the blood of the woman he loved and the face of the daughter he lost. The next morning, he went back to the steel plant. Maya was working again, her eyes puffy from crying after her adoptive mother's passing. When she saw him, she smiled weakly. "Sir, thank you for coming to the hospital. That meant a lot." Richard swallowed his pain and said softly, "Maya, there's something you deserve to know." She looked at him curiously, her eyes full of quiet strength. They sat down on a bench near the loading area, the hum of machines fading behind them. Richard's hands trembled as he spoke. "I've been looking for someone for a long time, someone I lost. When I saw you, I thought you were her, but I found out something else instead. The woman who raised you. She loved you more than life, right?" Maya nodded, tears filling her eyes. "She saved me. She told me once she found me near a riverbank when I was little, half drowned. She said I was meant for a better life." Richard's voice broke. "That's true. But she didn't tell you everything. The woman who gave birth to you was my wife." Maya's eyes widened. "What?" she whispered. "That can't be." Richard nodded slowly. "She made a mistake before we met. She had you, but she couldn't keep you. When I married her, she told me she'd lost something long ago. I thought she meant her innocence. Now I know she meant you." Maya burst into tears, shaking her head. "No, that means I'm not your father," Richard said softly. his own tears falling. "But I loved your mother with all my heart, and I lost my daughter, Amara, so when I saw you, I thought maybe God had given me one more chance to love again." The air was heavy, the truth too painful for both to bear. Maya sobbed quietly, saying, "All my life I wondered why I felt out of place, why I dreamed of faces I couldn't remember. Maybe it was her, maybe it was you." Richard reached out and held her hand, his voice trembling. "Maybe it was both of us. Maybe love never really dies. It just finds a new way to come back." The workers nearby turned away respectfully, sensing something sacred unfolding. For the first time in years, Richard didn't feel alone. He offered to help her continue her education, to make her life better, not as a billionaire repaying fate, but as a man trying to heal old wounds. Maya hesitated, but finally nodded, realizing that life had connected them in a way that neither of them could understand. Over the next few months, Richard visited often. He became a mentor to her, helping her grow, watching her find her place in the world. But inside he was still broken, not because she wasn't his daughter, but because the truth about his wife had destroyed the perfect image he had carried for years. Yet somehow, through Maya's kindness and humility, he began to believe again that forgiveness is stronger than pain, that family isn't always blood, and that destiny writes its own story. The last scene of their story is one of quiet peace. Richard standing at the riverbank where he once lost everything, and now beside him, Maya placing flowers into the water. "For your daughter," she says softly. Richard looks at her and smiles. "And for your mother." The sun sets behind them, golden light reflecting on the water as the past finally finds rest. Viewers, life can break us, but sometimes it also gives us new reasons to heal. If this story touched your heart, remember, love can rebuild even the most broken souls. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who believes in miracles, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories that remind us what really matters in life.